So we have this incredibly pervasive cultural myth right now about what it actually takes to build serious wealth in the modern economy.
Oh, yeah, totally. It's everywhere.
Right. And I mean, if you ask the average person on the street to picture a highly successful, newly wealthy entrepreneur, they almost always imagine the exact same movie montage.
It's always a couple of 20-somethings in a glass-walled Silicon Valley office.
Exactly, yeah. Writing code on a whiteboard, building some flashy app that's going to, disrupt an entire industry.
And eventually ringing the bell at the stock exchange, right?
Yeah.
It is a deeply ingrained narrative. We are so conditioned to celebrate these success stories that are just highly visible and hyper-scalable.
Because the media absolutely loves a unicorn startup.
They do. But when you bypass the magazine covers and actually look at the structural data of what sustains wealth over a 10 or 20-year horizon, that glossy image completely shatters.
Which actually brings us to the core mission of today's Deep Dive. We are taking a massive stack of market reports, feasibility studies, and global economic data to look at a financial landscape that is essentially the exact mirror opposite of pop culture.
The mirror opposite is a great way to put it.
And you brought a specific survival statistic from the sources that I think just completely reframes this entire conversation.
I did, and honestly, it is a sobering reality check for anyone chasing that startup dream. So if you launch a high-risk, venture-backed tech startup today, the data shows your chances of that business surviving past the 10-year mark are roughly 10%.
10%? That is wild.
Right, just 10%. But if you turn your attention to traditional, everyday, unglamorous businesses—
The boring stuff.
Exactly, the boring stuff. The kinds of companies that pump septic tanks or locate buried utility lines or clean up biohazard scenes, the 10-year survival rate for those businesses jumps to 34.7%.
Wait, so you are more than 3 times as likely to survive in a business that literally nobody wants to talk about at a dinner party.
Not just survive, but generate massive, predictable, recession-resistant cash flow. I mean, today is strictly about understanding the mechanical gears of wealth.
So no social media virality today?
No, definitely not. We aren't discussing cryptocurrency, and we certainly aren't trying to predict fickle consumer trends. We are dissecting businesses that solve essential, non-discretionary problems for you, the listener, and your community.
The invisible financial engines running your city while you sleep.
That's exactly what they are.
Think of the economy like a house. Right now, everyone seems completely desperate to design the smart home interface for the living room.
Right, they want the flashy touchscreen on the wall.
Yeah, they want the touchscreen. But the person who owns the plumbing company, the person ensuring the toilets actually flush, that the basement doesn't flood, that the foundational infrastructure works, that is the person quietly building a financial empire.
Because the smart home tech might be completely obsolete in 2 years.
Exactly, but we will always need plumbing.
Always. And that framing is so crucial for you, the listener, whether you are looking to start a business or maybe buy an existing one, or simply just want to understand the invisible economic forces around you.
So to really grasp why the person holding the wrench is out-earning the person holding the iPad, we have to start with the foundational economics. Why does unsexy win?
Unsexy wins because of structural math. Specifically, it comes down to the massive valuation gap between a one-off transaction and recurring revenue.
Okay, let's unpack that math. When an investor is looking to buy a business, how do they value a company that has to hustle for every single sale versus one that just has locked-in contracts?
Well, it all comes down to predictability and risk. So if you own a business that relies on one-off sales, say a boutique retail shop or a custom furniture builder, an investor might only pay 1 or 2 times your annual profit to buy the company.
Because the risk is just too high, right?
Exactly. Next year's sales are entirely theoretical.
Yeah.
You wake up on January 1st at 0. You have to go find every single customer all over again.
Right.
But a business anchored by predictable, contract-based monthly income, like a commercial cleaning service or an outsourced bookkeeping firm, those routinely command valuations of 3 to 5 times their annual revenue.
Because the revenue actually stacks instead of resetting.
It stacks beautifully.
Yeah.
Let's break down the math on this. If you start a bookkeeping firm and secure a single local business client on an $800 monthly retainer, you haven't just made $800.
Right, you've made a long-term relationship.
Exactly. Over a 5-year horizon, that one single relationship represents $48,000 of locked-in cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually forecast your growth with math, not just hope.
You build a financial floor. So your baseline operational costs are covered by, say, the 15th of the month, and everything after that is pure profit.
Precisely.
Okay, but let me push back a little here. I hear the phrase recurring contract, and my mind instantly goes to that gym membership I signed up for 3 years ago.
Another classic gym membership.
Right, the one that requires a certified letter and a blood sample to cancel. There is a serious psychological friction there. If these service businesses rely on trust, how do you actually lock clients into recurring contracts without them feeling trapped?
The gym membership is actually a great counterexample because it relies on a concept called breakage.
Breakage, what is that?
Breakage is when a business actually hopes you don't use their service. Traditional gyms actively hope you don't show up. Their entire financial model collapses if every single paying member tries to use a treadmill on a Tuesday evening.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes sense. They couldn't fit everyone in the building.
Right. So they're selling an aspiration, and then they're basically taxing your guilt for not going.
Yeah.
But the businesses we are analyzing today operate on the exact opposite principle. They operate on essential value delivery.
So a dental office, for example, doesn't feel trapped by their $1,500 a month commercial cleaning contract.
Not at all. They feel relieved. They are paying for the total absence of a problem. They literally never have to worry about whether the waiting room is sterile or if the trash is emptied before the first patient arrives.
They're just outsourcing their headaches.
Exactly. And you secure and maintain those contracts through transparent, automated billing, crystal clear service terms, and just consistently neutralizing a friction point that they despise managing themselves.
Now, even if the math is undeniably better here, people still just flock to tech startups. And the sources highlight a really fascinating behavioral market inefficiency that explains this. They call it the glamour discount.
Yes, the glamour discount. This is essentially the secret weapon of the blue-collar millionaire.
I love that phrase.
It's a psychological phenomenon, really, where investors, venture capitalists, and highly educated entrepreneurs systematically avoid industries that involve physical labor, complex logistics, or social embarrassment.
It's the cocktail party test.
Exactly.
Like, if I'm at a networking event, it sounds incredibly prestigious to hold my drink and say I'm the founder of a decentralized AI finance platform.
Oh, very fancy.
Right. But it does not sound prestigious to say I own a fleet of 50 portable toilets. My ego takes a massive hit.
And because of that collective social ego, the competition in the portable toilet space is artificially depressed. Almost nobody wants to do it.
It keeps the market clear.
Think about it like booking a flight. No one actively desires the middle seat in the back row near the lavatory.
It's the worst seat on the plane.
Right. But imagine if the airline offered you a $500 cash payment to sit there. Suddenly, enduring a little discomfort becomes a highly rational economic choice.
You'd take that seat in a heartbeat.
Exactly. In the broader economy, society looks down on unglamorous, physically demanding work. So the entrepreneurs who swallow their pride and step into those roles are rewarded with a massive financial premium.
Because they face almost zero venture-backed, hyper-funded competition. Like Silicon Valley does not want to touch porta potties.
They absolutely don't. And because they are insulated from that kind of ruthless, well-funded disruption, these unsexy businesses can scale at their own pace. And they use a very specific operational metric to do it.
Right. The sources call this route density margin.
Yes, route density margin. This is the defining metric for any mobile service business. Pest control, waste management, vending machine, restocking, landscaping, these are all businesses constrained by time and geography.
So how does the formula actually work?
It is straightforward, but super powerful. You take your total contract revenue for a given area, you subtract your total fuel costs, then you subtract the labor cost of the technician driving, and you divide that remainder by the total miles driven.
So it's basically a measurement of how much profit you can squeeze out of the asphalt.
That's a perfect way to visualize it.
Let's ground this with a delivery driver analogy. Imagine 2 pizza places. The first one delivers 5 pizzas to 5 completely different towns spread all across a massive county.
Okay, a lot of driving.
Yeah. And the second one delivers 5 pizzas to 5 different rooms in the exact same college dorm building.
Right, so the top line revenue for those 5 pizzas is identical in both scenarios. But the profit margin is wildly, wildly different.
Because of the transit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In the first scenario, the business is just bleeding cash through fuel consumption, vehicle depreciation, and most dangerously non-billable labor time. You are paying a technician $25 an hour to just stare at a red light in traffic.
Which generates $0.
Zero. But in the dorm room scenario, the transit cost, approaches zero.
So if I'm running a pest control business, my goal isn't necessarily to expand to the next city over. My goal is to win the contract for the house immediately next door to the house I already service.
Yes, you want to build microscopic monopolies. If your technician can service 50 homes in one single neighborhood, they spend 90% of their shift actually spraying for pests, which is what generates the revenue, and only 10% driving.
Which means high route density creates a highly localized, highly defensible business that is incredibly difficult for some new competitor to just come in and dislodge.
It forms a physical moat around your business.
And that brings us to an industry where this concept of defensibility just reaches its absolute peak. We talked about the glamour discount keeping competition low, but there is a sector where that discount evolves into a massive, impenetrable fortress. Let's explore the extremes of unglamorous businesses.
We are moving into what we can call the ick factor as a competitive moat, specifically the biohazard and crime scene remediation industry.
Now, this operates completely outside of normal economic realities.
Yep.
Like, it is structurally immune to recessions, inflation, or technological disruption.
Because it is the ultimate definition of a distressed purchase. Nobody ever plans to hire a biohazard team.
Right, you don't budget for that.
No. And when they do need one, price sensitivity just goes completely out the window because the situation is often a severe health crisis, an emotional tragedy, or a massive legal liability for a property owner.
Let's actually break down the economics here because the rates in the source material are honestly astonishing.
They are very high.
Standard hourly labor rates for biohazard technicians range from $80 to $250 an hour, but jobs are typically billed by the project rate.
Yes, usually flat project rates.
So a basic biohazard cleanup, maybe just a minor fluid spill, runs $150 to $300 an hour. But a trauma scene, that is billed at $1,000 to $5,000.
Yeah, it goes higher.
Yeah, an unattended death cleanup hits $3,000 to $10,000. And severe hoarding situations, which obviously require days of labor, can reach up to $10,000 per job.
Those top-line numbers are substantial, but the margin profile is what makes the business model truly elite.
What are the margins looking like?
Gross margins in biohazard remediation sit between 30% and 50%. And even after you account for all the administrative overhead your vehicle fleet's marketing, the net profit margins settle very comfortably between 10% and 20%.
But I imagine I can't just buy a mop and a bucket of bleach and start charging $5,000 a day. The barriers to entry have to be significant.
They are extremely steep, and they are entirely regulatory.
Okay, so it's not the money to start it.
No. The initial financial capital required is surprisingly moderate. Around $10,000 to $50,000 will get you a properly outfitted van. But the knowledge capital and the compliance requirements are immense. You are dealing with human pathogens.
So standard household bleach isn't going to cut it?
Not at all. Bleach does not neutralize hepatitis or HIV on a porous surface like drywall. You have to purchase highly specialized trauma chemistry that's designed to break down biological matter at a molecular level.
And the protective gear alone sounds intense. The sources mention needing level A through C hazmat equipment. What does that actually mean for the person doing the work?
So it dictates the level of respiratory and skin protection. Level A is the highest. That's a fully encapsulating vapor-tight chemical suit with a self-contained breathing apparatus, or SCBA.
Wow, like a scuba tank, basically.
Exactly like you'd see in a sci-fi movie. You use this when the environment is highly toxic or completely unknown. Then level B provides that same respiratory protection, but the suit isn't vapor-tight, it's just splash-resistant.
Okay, and what about for a standard job?
For most standard biohazard and trauma scenes, technicians operate in level C gear. That involves full-body splash suits, heavy nitrile gloves, and air-purifying respirators to filter out airborne pathogens and severe odors.
Plus, you're wearing all this in potentially a hot house with no AC.
The physical toll is massive. Add in commercial HEPA vacuums to scrub the air and commercial liability and pollution insurance that runs $3,000 to $15,000 annually.
So the compliance alone keeps casual competitors completely out of the market.
Absolutely.
But honestly, as a business owner, how do you even market this? I can't just run an upbeat social media campaign on Instagram saying, call us when tragedy strikes your family.
No, that would be a disaster.
Right? You are dealing with landlords in crisis, grieving families, people experiencing literally the worst day of their lives. How does a company scale empathy while maintaining those 50% margins?
That is the hardest part. You cannot market this direct to consumer in the traditional sense. It is seen as highly predatory and it's frankly just highly ineffective. The most successful remediation companies build their entire business model on B2B business relationships.
Okay, so they aren't waiting for the homeowner to just find them on Google.
No, they don't rely on search traffic. They spend months and years building deep, trusted relationships with the institutions that actually manage these tragedies.
Like who?
Local police departments, county coroners, first responders, and property insurance adjusters.
Ah, I see.
When an event occurs, the police officer or the coroner is the one handing the family a discreet brochure for a vetted, compassionate remediation company. By securing those referral pipelines, the business completely stabilizes its workflow.
They transition from being just an emergency cleaner to being the trusted institutional solution to an incredibly difficult human problem.
Exactly. It removes the marketing friction entirely.
It is so fascinating how a business built on absolute chaos actually relies on incredibly stable institutional relationships to survive. Let's shift from biohazards to another business driven by the ick factor, but on a much, much wider scale: waste management and septic pumping.
If biohazard is a distressed purchase, septic pumping is what economists call a non-discretionary utility.
Non-discretionary meaning you literally have no choice.
Right.
The sources show that a single residential septic tank cleaning generates $300 to $500 per visit. And established operators who have really dialed in that root density margin we talked about earlier are pulling in $40,000 to $70,000 a month in revenue.
It is remarkably consistent.
And the portable toilet rental market is projected to hit nearly $35 billion globally by 2030.
That term non-discretionary is the key to that $35 billion valuation. So discretionary spending is the budget you cut when the economy takes a downturn.
Like delaying buying a new car or canceling a vacation.
Exactly. Or you stop eating at expensive restaurants. But non-discretionary spending is tied to fundamental human survival and basic hygiene.
Right. I mean, if you wake up on a Tuesday and your home's septic tank is backing up raw sewage into your backyard, you do not sit down at the kitchen table and say, well, let's wait out this current inflationary cycle before we call the pump truck.
No, you absolutely do not.
You are paying whatever the operator quotes you immediately.
Because the consumer has no viable alternative, and the physical labor is incredibly unappealing to the general workforce, the operators enjoy extremely low price elasticity.
So they can just dictate the market.
Basically, yes. If fuel prices rise or labor costs increase, the septic company simply raises its rates. They rarely lose customers over price increases because the barrier to finding a cheaper competitor who is actually available that exact same day is just too high.
Wow. Okay, we've thoroughly explored the economics of cleaning up messes. Now let's look at a business model dedicated entirely to preventing massive catastrophic messes. I want to talk about bridging the responsibility gap with private utility locating.
But this is a phenomenal niche. It operates right at the intersection of heavy construction legal liability and advanced diagnostic physics.
Most of us have seen those public service announcements or the spray-painted signs on grass that say, call 811 before you dig.
Right, the utility flags.
Yeah. The general assumption for a homeowner or even a small contractor is that you call the municipal 811 number, the city sends a guy out with some flags and spray paint for free, and you're totally clear to bring in the bulldozers. But the sources refer to this as the 811 illusion. Why is it an illusion?
Because it completely misunderstands where public liability ends and private liability begins. Municipal 811 services are only legally mandated to mark public utility lines.
Just the public stuff.
Yes. That means the main water pipes, the high-pressure gas mains, and the power grid infrastructure owned by the city or the massive utility conglomerate. But their jurisdiction and their locating equipment stops dead at the property meter.
So the meter on the side of the building is the cutoff line. So what is actually buried past the meter that causes so much trouble?
Oh, it's a labyrinth of private infrastructure. If you are on a commercial campus, a university, or even a large residential estate, you have private sewer laterals branching off the main line. You have high voltage feeds running from the main building to detached garages or security outposts.
I didn't even think about that.
You have complex landscape lighting grids, fiber optic communications lines running between office buildings, and private gas lines feeding outdoor commercial kitchens or heated pools. The 811 locator will not mark a single inch of that.
And if a commercial construction crew brings in a heavy excavator and blindly tears through a private fiber optic cable or worse, a private gas line, the city isn't paying for it.
Not a dime. The property owner or the construction firm is entirely liable. And hitting a private gas line isn't just a simple scheduling delay. It is potentially lethal. And the financial damages can easily run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars in repairs and work stoppage penalties.
Which completely ruins a project's budget. So enter the private utility locator. Construction firms will gladly pay a premium for someone to come out and map the subsurface before they break ground. It's basically like having an X-ray machine for the Earth.
That's exactly what it is.
But what does it actually take to set up an Earth X-ray business? Because the source material puts the initial capital investment between $40,000 and $80,000. Where's all that money going?
The vast majority of that capital is deployed into highly specialized diagnostic hardware. You generally need two distinct types of technology to paint a complete underground picture. The first is electromagnetic or EM locators. These cost between $3,000 and $10,000.
Okay, so how does an EM locator actually work? Are they just waving a metal detector over the grass like at the beach?
It's much more sophisticated than a metal detector. EM locators detect the magnetic fields created by alternating electrical current.
Okay.
So if you have a live power cable buried 3 feet down, it naturally emits a specific frequency. The technician sweeps a receiver over the ground to detect that exact frequency.
That makes sense for power lines. But what about for metallic pipes that don't have active current running through them, like an old iron water pipe?
Great question. For those, the technician can physically clip a transmitter to an exposed part of the pipe above ground, like a valve, which induces a specific radio frequency down the entire line. Then they track that induced signal across the property.
Oh, that is super clever. But wait, that covers metal and electrical lines. What if a developer buried PVC plastic pipes or a concrete storm drain? Magnets aren't going to help you there at all.
Exactly. And that is why the second piece of technology is so critical. You need ground-penetrating radar, or GPR. A commercial GPR system is expensive, usually running $15,000 to $25,000. It physically looks a bit like a futuristic lawnmower. And as you push it across the surface, it transmits high-frequency radio waves straight down into the soil.
And it bounces back an image of the plastic pipe.
It bounces back a signal based on what's called dielectric permittivity.
Which is?
Essentially, the radar wave travels at a certain speed through normal dirt. But when it hits something with a completely different density, like an air-filled PVC pipe or a water-filled concrete drain, part of the wave reflects back to the surface antenna.
So what does the technician actually see on the screen?
They read this on a specialized screen. It doesn't look like a clear photograph at all. It looks like a series of hyperbolic curves, or these inverted U-shapes. A skilled technician has to interpret the peak of that curve to determine the exact depth and location of the non-metallic target.
That sounds like it takes a lot of training. So you have a highly skilled technician driving a $30,000 truck, carrying roughly $35,000 worth of EM and GPR equipment. What kind of revenue does that setup generate?
The pricing power is phenomenal because you are selling pure risk mitigation.
Right, you're selling peace of mind.
For a standard residential scan, maybe someone just wants to put in a swimming pool. Operators charge a flat fee of $250 to $500, which might literally take an hour.
Wow.
And for complex commercial sites, they bill hourly rates of $100 to $200, or they price the job per linear foot, typically 50 cents to $2 a foot.
And a large commercial development could have miles of private lines. That adds up incredibly fast. But the liability for the locator is also huge, right? I mean, if your technician misreads that radar screen and tells an excavator it's totally safe to dig and they hit a gas line, your company's on the hook.
Absolutely. Which is why the sources stress that the most profitable, enduring companies in this space adhere strictly to industry standards, specifically the NULCA competence standard.
NULCA, what does that stand for?
It stands for the National Utility Locating Contractors Association. They established the strict baseline for how a utility should be identified, marked, and documented. Elite operators use NULCA standards to implement rigorous internal quality control.
What does that look like in practice?
For example, a supervisor will randomly audit 10% of a technician's field tickets. They will go out to the site after the technician leaves and use their own equipment to verify that the yellow paint on the grass perfectly aligns with the gas line below.
Because when you are selling safety, accuracy is your entire brand value.
Exactly. If you lose trust, you lose the business.
Okay, we've gone deep underground to map infrastructure. Let's come back above ground and look at how things break down. Specifically, I want to talk about literal trash and how environmental pressure has created an absolute goldmine. The circular economy is no longer just some ecological buzzword. It is a highly lucrative business model.
Historically, waste management was a purely linear process.
Well,
You extract, manufacture, and consume, and throw it into a hole in the ground.
the landfill.
Right. But as landfill real estate becomes increasingly scarce and municipal regulations tighten, the economic incentives have dramatically aligned with sustainability. We are shifting to a model where waste is viewed as a raw manufacturing input.
Let's start with a surprisingly specific bottleneck in the waste industry: mattresses. I honestly had no idea that cities hated mattresses so passionately.
Landfill operators view mattresses as a total logistical nightmare.
Because they're big.
It's more than that. They do not compress under the weight of garbage. The internal steel springs constantly pop out, they tangle in the tracks of the massive landfill bulldozers, and cause wildly expensive equipment damage.
I never would have thought of that.
Furthermore, the hollow spaces inside a buried mattress create toxic air pockets that trap methane gas. Because of this, many municipalities charge exorbitant disposal fees for mattresses, or they are actively passing legislation to ban them from standard landfills entirely.
Which creates a massive pain point for hotels, universities, and everyday consumers who are just trying to get rid of an old bed. And where there is a massive pain point, there is a brilliant business opportunity. The data shows a localized mattress recycling operation can pull in $20,000 to $50,000 a month.
Yes.
And the genius of this model is the double-sided revenue stream.
You are effectively getting paid twice for the exact same item.
How does that work?
First, you charge the consumer, the hotel chain, or the municipality a collection fee just to haul the mattress away. They pay you to take it.
Yeah.
Then your facility physically breaks the mattress down into its core components.
Tearing it apart.
Right. You extract the steel springs, you strip the polyurethane foam, you pull the cotton and the wood framing, you bundle those salvaged commodities, and you sell them to specialized recycling centers or scrap buyers.
You get paid to pick it up and you get paid to drop it off. That's incredible. The spectrum of how you can scale this is wild too. According to the sources, you can start a bare-bones manual sorting operation for literally $62. I assume that is basically buying a pack of heavy-duty box cutters, some safety gloves, and a tarp in your garage.
It is the ultimate low-barrier entry point. You rely entirely on manual sweat equity to slice the fabric and separate the materials by hand.
But if you have capital, or once you generate enough cash flow, you can invest up to roughly $36,000 to set up high-speed mechanical shredders. You transition from a manual gig to an industrial processing facility.
You buy magnetic separators for the steel automated balers for the foam. It perfectly illustrates capital efficiency. You start with sweat equity and a borrowed pickup truck. Build your route density with local hotels and dormitories, and constantly reinvest the collection fees into automation.
So cool. Now, if mattresses seem too bulky, there is another circular economy play that is deeply rooted in science and massive global demand: small-scale organic fertilizer production.
This capitalizes on a macro shift in global agriculture. The organic farming sector is growing at roughly 12% annually.
Huge growth.
Farmers and massive agricultural conglomerates are actively trying to transition away from synthetic petroleum-based chemical inputs that degrade topsoil health over long periods. They desperately need nutrient-dense biological compost.
And the raw materials required to make this highly valuable compost are basically lying around for free.
Completely.
The sources outline how an entrepreneur can source chicken manure, cow dung, fruit peels, and crop residues. This material is just piling up at massive poultry farms and food processing plants. And these companies are desperate to get rid of it because they face heavy municipal fines if agricultural runoff pollutes local waterways.
It's a huge liability for them.
Right. So they will happily let you haul it away for free, and some will even pay you a tipping fee to take it off their hands.
You are solving an environmental liability for the farm, and in exchange, you acquire 100% of your manufacturing inputs at a cost of absolute zero.
Zero cost of goods sold, basically.
Exactly. That creates an almost insurmountable margin advantage before you even begin the processing phase.
Setting up the actual processing facility requires an initial capital investment of $17,000 to $32,000.
It's not bad at all.
Yeah, you need a compost windrow turner, which costs about $2,000 to $5,000. You need a commercial crusher or grinder for the larger agricultural waste, running $1,500 to $3,000. You need a rotary screener to sift the final product in basic packaging gear. But how do you actually turn a giant pile of fruit peels and chicken manure into premium shelf-ready fertilizer?
It is not a matter of just piling garbage in a field and waiting for it to rot. It is a highly precise biological and thermal process. You have to achieve the exact correct carbon to nitrogen ratio in your raw mix.
And what is that ratio?
Ideally, it needs to be between 25-1 and 30-1.
Why does that specific ratio 30-1 matter so much?
Because you are essentially farming microbes. The nitrogen-rich green waste, like the poultry manure and the fruit peels, provides the protein that the composting bacteria need to multiply rapidly.
Okay.
And the carbon-rich brown waste, like dried leaves, straw, or wood chips, provides the carbohydrate energy source for those bacteria. If you have too much nitrogen, the pile turns anaerobic and just smells intensely like ammonia. Right. But if you have too much carbon, the biological breakdown completely stalls and nothing happens at all.
So you dial in the 30-1 ratio perfectly. Then what?
You pile the carefully mixed material into long triangular rows called windrows. These are usually about 4 to 5 feet high and can be hundreds of feet long.
Yeah.
Because you provided the perfect diet, the microbial activity inside the pile just explodes.
And the byproduct of millions of bacteria metabolizing the waste is heat.
Massive amounts of heat.
Yeah.
The core of the windrow will heat up naturally, and your goal is to manage the pile so it hits exactly 131 degrees Fahrenheit.
131, that seems very specific. Why that number?
It is the critical thermal threshold. At 131 degrees, thermophilic bacteria thrive. But that temperature is just hot enough to effectively kill off any harmful pathogens, weed seeds, or dangerous bacteria like E. coli or Salmonella that were present in the raw manure.
Which you definitely don't want in fertilizer you're selling.
Exactly.
Okay.
However, if you let the pile exceed 160 degrees, it will actually kill the beneficial microbes, and you run the risk of spontaneous combustion.
Spontaneous combustion of manure. That sounds like an absolute nightmare.
It is a literal dumpster fire.
So how do you stop it from getting too hot and catching on fire?
That is where that windrow turner machine comes in. Twice a week, you drive this machine over the long piles. It physically churns the material, releasing the trapped heat, introducing fresh oxygen to the core, and regulating the moisture content.
So it's active management.
Yes. After 30 to 45 days of this active management, the biological breakdown is complete. The heat subsides, and you are left with dark, rich, pathogen-free organic compost.
You run it through the rotary screener to pull out any large chunks, bag it up, and sell it. The financial margins detailed in the sources on this are staggering. The monthly operating costs, so fuel for the Turner labor packaging, run $2,500 to $5,100.
Very low overhead.
Right. But you are generating $4,500 to $15,000 monthly by selling 30 to 60 tons of fertilizer at $150 to $250 a ton. We are talking massive 40 to 60% net profit margins.
And again, those margins exist strictly because your primary input cost is heavily subsidized or just entirely free.
But let me play devil's advocate here for a second. If the machinery is relatively cheap, the raw material is free, and the profit margins are 60%, why isn't every vacant lot outside the city limits a bustling fertilizer plant?
It comes down to regulatory reality and supply chain fragility.
Okay.
While the biology is straightforward, the zoning laws are completely brutal. You cannot just process hundreds of tons of manure near a residential zone. Municipalities will shut you down immediately due to odor complaints and the risk of toxic leachate, the liquid runoff from the piles contaminating the groundwater.
You have to prove you aren't poisoning the local aquifer.
Exactly. You need strict environmental permits, health and safety compliance, and properly graded, often concrete padded land to manage the runoff. Furthermore, the entire business model collapses if you do not secure ironclad supply chain contracts before you launch.
Meaning what?
If you build your facility based on the waste output of 3 local poultry farms and a massive corporate fertilizer company comes in and offers those farms a higher rate for their manure, your production halts instantly. You have the machinery, but no inputs.
Your supply is gone.
Navigating municipal zoning and locking in decade-long agricultural contracts is a barrier most entrepreneurs simply will not cross.
It requires serious operational and legal rigor, not just a recipe for dirt.
Exactly.
Now, organic fertilizer relies heavily on carefully controlling moisture and temperature over a 45-day period. But what happens when moisture is completely catastrophically out of control?
You enter the domain of high-ticket emergencies, the highly lucrative disaster restoration industry.
We are talking about the chaos of flooded basements, burst overhead pipes in commercial buildings, kitchen fires, and massive mold outbreaks. The economics of disaster. And the top-line revenue numbers for a startup in this space are incredible. The sources indicate that a well-run restoration company can generate $250,000 to $750,000 in revenue within its first 1 to 2 years.
But that revenue is not evenly distributed across all types of disasters. The data shows the work mix is heavily skewed.
How so?
Typically, a restoration company's revenue is composed of 60 to 80% water damage mitigation, 10 to 20% fire damage restoration, 5 to 15% mold remediation, and 5 to 10% reconstruction.
And the crucial element here is who is actually paying the bill. In 70 to 85% of these cases, you are not asking a panicked homeowner to drain their child's college savings account. You are billing multi-billion-dollar insurance carriers like State Farm or Allstate. But the total revenue number is misleading if you don't understand the margin spread. The sources break down a specific profit dynamic that dictates whether a restoration company thrives or just goes bankrupt.
It is the most critical operational metric in the entire industry, differentiating between mitigation and reconstruction.
Okay, explain the difference.
Mitigation is the emergency phase, extracting the standing water, tearing out the soaked carpet, setting up commercial dehumidifiers, and stopping the damage from spreading any further. Reconstruction is the secondary phase, putting up new drywall painting and installing new cabinets to return the home to its original state.
And the profit profiles of those two phases are vastly different.
Night and day. The gross margins for water mitigation are astronomical, sitting at 70 to 80%. Mold remediation yields 55 to 70%. Fire damage sits at 50 to 65%. But reconstruction, the margin drops off an absolute cliff to 20 to 40%.
Why such a huge drop?
Think about the inputs. If I am doing reconstruction, I have to buy expensive lumber custom cabinetry and hire highly skilled carpenters and painters. The materials and specialized labor completely consume the budget. But mitigation is largely passive.
I have a great restaurant analogy for this. Mitigation is like selling the sodas and the appetizers.
Okay.
The cost to you for a fountain soda is pennies, so the profit margin is huge.
Right.
Reconstruction is like selling the imported dry-aged steak dinner. The total dollar amount on the receipt is high, which makes your top-line revenue look great. But the ingredients and the specialized chefs are so expensive that your actual take-home profit is surprisingly low.
That is spot on.
As a business owner, you want to serve the customer both the steak and the soda to get the biggest total bill, but the real profit that keeps the lights on is in drying out the sodas.
That analogy perfectly isolates the economic engine of restoration. Mitigation equipment is the ultimate capital asset. Let's look at a commercial low-grain refrigerant dehumidifier. You purchase one for $2,000. Your technician spends 30 minutes plugging it into a flooded basement.
Okay.
For the next 4 days, that machine just sits there passively pulling moisture out of the air, and you bill the insurance company $150 a day in rental fees.
Wow.
The machine pays for itself in less than a month, and for the next 5 years, every dollar it generates is nearly pure profit.
But despite these amazing 80% margins, the source material highlights a terrifying statistic. 62% of restoration companies cannot calculate their job level margins. How do you run a $500,000 company and literally not know if you were making money?
It happens because they blur the lines between the steak and the soda. They lump the high-margin mitigation revenue and the low-margin reconstruction costs into one massive convoluted accounting bucket.
A recipe for disaster.
They smear their administrative overhead across the top of everything. At the end of the year, their bank account has money in it, but they have absolutely no idea which specific jobs or which specific project managers are actually profitable and which ones are secretly draining their resources.
And that lack of financial visibility leads directly into what the report calls the deadly cash flow gap.
This is the mechanism that destroys fast-growing restoration companies. Because 80% of your work is funded by insurance claims, you are entirely subjected to institutional payment cycles. Insurance companies rarely pay directly. They use middlemen called third-party administrators, or TPAs.
What is the function of a TPA? Are they just cutting the checks?
No, a TPA is designed to control costs for the insurance carrier. When you finish a job, you submit a highly detailed line item estimate using specialized software. The TPA acts as an auditor. They review your invoice line by line, arguing over whether you really needed 5 air movers or just 4, and demanding justifications for your labor hours. This administrative friction creates a massive 30 to 90-day gap between the day you physically finish drying out a flooded home and the day the check actually clears your bank account.
So put yourself in the shoes of the business owner. During those 30 to 90 days of arguing with some auditor, you still have to process payroll for your technicians every single Friday. You have to buy fuel for the fleet of vans. You have to pay the rent on your warehouse.
Exactly.
The sources state you need $20,000 to $50,000 in working capital just sitting in liquid cash to survive that gap. If you don't have it, you will literally grow yourself into bankruptcy. You could have $1 million in approved accounts receivable and $0 in your checking account to pay your staff tomorrow.
Precisely. You drown in your own growth, which is why mastering the digital marketing engine is so critical in year one. You cannot passively rely on TPAs to feed you jobs, because TPA network jobs often require you to sign aggressive pricing concessions, essentially agreeing to lower your rates in exchange for volume.
So to maintain your 80% margins, you need direct inbound emergency leads. You need the homeowner calling you.
Yes. The data recommends a highly aggressive digital strategy, spending $3,000 to $5,000 a month specifically on Google local services ads.
That makes total sense. I mean, if someone wakes up at 2 a.m. to a bursting pipe flooding their living room, they are not logging into Facebook to ask for casual recommendations.
No, they're in a complete panic.
They Google emergency plumber flood cleanup near me, and they click the very first certified phone number that appears at the top of the screen.
If your marketing budget secures that top placement, you win the click. You dispatch your crew, you bypass the TPA referral middleman, you establish the contract directly with the homeowner, and you dictate the estimating terms.
It is the absolute difference between acting as a subservient subcontractor to an insurance giant and operating as an independent, highly profitable local authority.
It is everything.
We spend a lot of time analyzing dirt water, human waste, and physical disasters, but the definition of unsexy and boring doesn't just mean physical grime anymore. Let's pivot to the new frontier of boring: tech-enabled and mobile infrastructure.
The modern economy has evolved. We are seeing the rise of brand new categories of unglamorous, highly essential businesses that leverage digital efficiency but solve very grounded, real-world operational bottlenecks.
Let's look at the low-overhead agency models, specifically AI receptionist agencies. This feels like a brilliant arbitrage of modern technology.
It addresses a massive invisible leak in local business revenue. Small service businesses, dental offices, law firms, independent HVAC dispatchers miss a staggering number of inbound phone calls.
Right, because their front desk administrator is busy helping a patient or they're on the other line.
Or a potential customer calls at 7 p.m. after the office is closed. In a highly competitive local market, a missed call isn't just a voicemail. It is lost revenue because that customer simply calls the next dentist on the Google search results.
So an entrepreneur sets up a white label AI voice agent to plug that leak.
Yes.
The startup cost outlined in the sources is absurdly low, between $300 and $500 to license the base software and train the AI on the specific business's FAQs and booking software. You approach the dental office and charge them a flat rate of $129 to $149 a month to handle their overflow calls and after-hours bookings 24/7.
And the margins are astonishing, 80 to 96%. You set the system up once, and the software handles the scale infinitely with almost zero ongoing labor from you.
It is the digital equivalent of a recurring utility bill for that dentist.
Another perfect example in the digital space is course platform setup or managing learning management systems. The global e-learning market is projected to reach $370 billion by 2026.
And the bottleneck isn't a lack of knowledge, it's tech paralysis.
Exactly. You have thousands of highly qualified experts, veteran tax consultants, specialized therapists, industry engineers who possess incredibly valuable proprietary knowledge. They want to monetize that knowledge by selling an online course.
Right.
But they are completely paralyzed by the technical friction required to build out a platform on software like Teachable or Kajabi. They don't know how to integrate payment gateways, structure video modules, or set up automated email funnels.
They know their content perfectly, but the tech is just a completely foreign language. So the entrepreneur steps in to bridge that gap, You charge a flat fee of $3,000 to $15,000 to physically build out their platform and handle the integrations. Since your only input is your specialized time and expertise in the software, the margins are upwards of 95%.
It is the exact same dynamic as the physical world. You are acting as the digital plumber. You are building the digital pipes and infrastructure so the expert's knowledge can securely flow to their paying customers.
I love that framing, digital plumbers. But if we want to talk about actual physical power flowing, we have to examine mobile EV charging. This segment of the data completely shifted my perspective on electric vehicles.
It addresses a massive, immediate, and incredibly complex infrastructure bottleneck. As government mandates and consumer preferences accelerate the adoption of electric vehicles, the permanent fixed charging infrastructure, the stations physically wired into the municipal power grid simply cannot scale fast enough.
We hear about the grid constraints constantly.
You have severe electrical grid limitations, multi-year zoning and permitting delays for new stations, and a notoriously high percentage of public chargers that are broken, vandalized, or offline at any given moment.
The real-world result is that consumers are experiencing massive range anxiety, getting stranded on highways, or massive commercial logistics. Companies are electrifying their delivery fleets but don't have enough depot power to charge all their vans overnight.
Exactly.
The solution proposed in the sources is mobile EV charging. What does that actually look like?
Imagine a heavy-duty service van or a custom trailer. Inside is a massive skid-mounted lithium iron phosphate or LFP battery system. We're talking about 100 kilowatt hours of stored energy, essentially a massive power bank on wheels.
Why LFP specifically?
LFP chemistry is crucial here because it is significantly more thermally stable and poses a much lower fire risk than traditional lithium-ion batteries, which is absolutely vital when you are bouncing it down a highway in a truck.
The strategic capability of one of these vans is incredible. A single mobile unit can dispatch to a busy highway and rescue 4 to 6 stranded EVs in a single shift without ever having to return to its Home Depot to recharge its own banks. And importantly, they deliver direct DC fast charging.
That is the operational key. DC fast charging bypasses the vehicle's internal converter, delivering energy directly to the battery. This means the mobile unit can deliver 15 to 20 miles of rescue range 5 times faster than a standard portable AC charger.
Which is huge for safety.
Yes. In an emergency roadside scenario, minimizing the time a technician spends exposed to high-speed traffic on the shoulder of a highway is a critical safety metric.
But the barrier to entry here is wildly different from the AI receptionist. You aren't buying a $500 software license. Purchasing a commercial-grade mobile EV charging unit costs between $63,000 and $190,000 per unit, and that's not even including the truck.
It is an intensely capital-heavy business, but that massive upfront cost creates a formidable defensive moat. The average entrepreneur simply cannot afford to compete with you. And the revenue model is highly versatile. You're not just sitting around waiting for stranded drivers to call you for an emergency jumpstart.
Right. The B2B applications are where the massive scale happens. You can secure lucrative fleet contracts where you guarantee mobile power delivery to logistics and delivery companies whose internal grid is failing.
Or you can serve as off-grid zero-emission power sources for massive outdoor events, music festivals, or remote construction sites that traditionally rely on loud, polluting diesel generators. You are essentially operating a privatized mobile utility company.
You are financially bridging the gap between current consumer adoption rates and the decades it will actually take for the fixed infrastructure grid to catch up. Until that happens, mobile EV charging is the ultimate modern utility.
Exactly.
We have covered an immense amount of ground today. We've analyzed the chemistry of biohazards, the physics of utility radar, the microbiology of composting, the massive margins of disaster restoration, and the architecture of digital and mobile utilities. Knowing these businesses are incredible, resilient engines of wealth is powerful. But knowledge without execution is just trivia. Let's move to the most urgent part of our discussion. How does the average listener actually acquire or fund one of these businesses today?
The urgency is driven by a demographic inevitability that economists refer to as the silver tsunami.
The massive wave of retiring baby boomers.
Exactly. An entire generation of business owners is currently hitting retirement age. These individuals spent the last 30 years building highly profitable, unglamorous businesses. Commercial laundry facilities, massive landscaping routes, regional HVAC empires.
But their kids don't want them.
Right. Their children raised in the digital age generally have zero interest in taking over the family septic pumping business. They want to work in tech finance or media.
which triggers an unprecedented transfer of physical business assets. For a prospective entrepreneur listening right now, buying an existing cash-flowing business is statistically a much safer, more rational path than attempting to build a startup from absolute zero.
Definitely.
When you buy, you are acquiring a trained workforce, an established local brand, immediate route density, and most importantly, historical, provable cash flow from day one.
However, navigating the acquisition market requires intense scrutiny. You cannot blindly purchase a company just because the top-line revenue looks impressive. The sources provide a rigorous checklist of red flags that should cause a buyer to severely renegotiate the valuation or, frankly, just walk away entirely.
Let's break down the most dangerous red flags. The primary one that stands out is owner dependence.
Owner dependence is fatal to an acquisition. If you are analyzing a commercial cleaning company and you realize that 80% of their Meiji contracts are secured simply because the current owner plays golf every Saturday with the region's property managers, you have a massive problem.
Because the revenue is tied to the owner's personal charisma and lifelong relationships, not the business's actual operational excellence.
Exactly. If the owner retires and moves to Florida, the relationships leave with them and those contracts will just evaporate. You didn't buy a standalone business. You bought a highly paid job that you don't actually possess the social capital to execute.
Another major red flag is a cash-heavy operation with weak, undocumented financial records. If the seller looks you in the eye and says, well, the tax returns say we make $200,000, but we actually take in $500,000 in cash that we don't report, run the other way.
Fast. You can never pay a premium for unprovable revenue, and you are inheriting a massive tax liability. Additionally, you must analyze employee churn. If a landscaping company is constantly rehiring its entire crew every 3 months, it indicates a toxic internal culture or a fundamental flaw in how they bid jobs and pay their labor. You do not want to inherit a broken machine.
Conversely, what are the green flags? What proves that a business is a scalable, transferable asset?
The ultimate green flag is the presence of a strong supervisor layer. You want to see that middle management, a lead technician, a dispatch manager, an office administrator is running the day-to-day operations seamlessly without the owner's constant intervention.
You want to see systems.
You want heavily documented standard operating procedures for every single task. You want aggressively clean financials where business and personal expenses are strictly separated. And you want low customer concentration, meaning no single client accounts for more than 10 to 15% of total revenue.
So let's say you find the perfect target. It has middle management, clean books, and diverse contracts. But the asking price is $2 million. The average person listening to this does not have $2 million sitting in a checking account. How do you actually allocate capital and fund this acquisition?
This is where you leverage specialized financial instruments. In the United States, the most powerful tool for an acquisition entrepreneur is the SBA 7A loan program. The Small Business Administration does not lend the money directly. Rather, they guarantee a significant portion of the loan for an approved bank.
So it lowers the risk.
This federal guarantee drastically lowers the risk for the lender, allowing them to finance acquisitions for buyers who might lack massive personal collateral.
And the leverage is incredible. With a strong SBA loan, you can often acquire a multi-million-dollar business with just a 10% cash down payment.
For businesses that are highly asset-heavy, like a company that owns 20 vacuum trucks, or a fleet of heavy excavators, you can utilize equipment financing. You use the physical machinery itself as the collateral to secure the loan, which protects your personal assets and preserves your working capital.
But the most brilliant and perhaps underutilized strategy mentioned in the data is seller financing.
Seller financing aligns the incentive of the buyer and the seller perfectly. In this structure, the retiring owner agrees to act as a bank for a portion of the purchase price.
How does that look in reality?
For example, you might get an SBA loan for 70% of the price, put down 10% in cash, and the seller finances the remaining 20%. You pay that 20% back to the seller over 3 to 5 years directly from the monthly profits of the business.
Which is the ultimate lie detector test during negotiations. If the seller demands 100% cash up front and refuses to finance a single dime, it strongly implies they know a storm is coming. Maybe a major client is leaving or the equipment is failing and they want to completely wash their hands of the risk.
Yes.
But if they agree to finance 20%, they are structurally proving that they believe the business will remain profitable enough under your leadership to pay them back. It is the ultimate risk mitigation tool.
It creates a vested interest in your success. A seller who finances a portion of the deal will ensure your transition period is flawless. They will happily introduce you to key clients, and they will answer your panicked phone calls 6 months later because their retirement income depends on your ongoing success.
We have unpacked a tremendous amount of economic machinery today. We've explored the compounding math of recurring revenue, the psychological and financial moat created by the glamour discount and the ick factor. We've mapped the hidden high liability infrastructure of private utility, broken down the microbiology of turning waste into premium agricultural assets, and dissected the critical margin spread in disaster restoration. We've even looked at how digital and mobile solutions are becoming the new essential utilities.
It's a completely different way to view the world.
It really is. My primary hope for you, the listener, is that tomorrow morning when you walk out your front door, you view your city through an entirely different lens. When you are stuck in traffic behind a massive septic pumping truck, or you see a white van parked outside the dental clinic at 6 a.m., or you watch a utility locator painting yellow lines on a sidewalk, I hope you no longer see that as background noise. I hope you see the brilliant, scalable, recession-proof, cash-flowing systems that form the true, unshakable backbone of the global economy.
It requires a profound paradigm shift in how we assign value and status to labor. And to build on everything we've analyzed today, I'd like to leave the listener with one final, deeply provocative thought to explore on their own.
Let's hear it.
Throughout this entire deep dive, we have relied heavily on the concept of the glamour discount, the reality that society currently looks down on physical, dirty, unsexy jobs, which artificially depresses competition and keeps profit margins exceptionally high for those willing to do the work. But consider the current explosive trajectory of technology. As artificial intelligence and advanced machine learning continue to automate, replicate, and completely replace traditional white-collar desk jobs, complex coding, legal copywriting, financial data analysis, at record speeds will we witness a massive societal cultural inversion.
Wait, so you mean...
Fast forward to the year 2036, when an AI agent can execute the daily tasks of a mid-level software engineer, a junior accountant, or a marketing director in 3 seconds for fractions of a penny. But it still absolutely cannot physically maneuver a vacuum hose into a septic tank. It cannot read the nuance of a ground-penetrating radar screen on a muddy construction site. And it cannot emotionally navigate a grieving family while neutralizing a biohazard scene. Will the plumber, the utility locator, and the restoration technician become the new high-status elite professions? Will the glamour discount that currently protects these industries completely flip, evolving into a highly coveted physical reality premium?
That completely flips the script on what we consider a successful career path. The very skills and businesses that society ignores today might become the ultimate irreplaceable status symbols of tomorrow. Like the smart home analogy we started with, when the digital interface is entirely built and managed by AI, the human being holding physical wrench is the one who holds all the leverage. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the invisible mechanics of the everyday economy. Keep questioning the prevailing narratives, keep looking for immense value in the places where others refuse to look, and keep exploring the fascinating systems that quietly run the world around you. We'll catch you next time.